The crystal chandeliers of the azure room scattered shimmering, ephemeral patterns across the pristine white marble floor, like restless spirits dancing. Maria Carter, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs, adjusted the crisp black fabric of her apron. A nervous tick she'd repeated countless times. It wasn't the mechanics of the job that had her hands trembling. She could navigate the demands of fine dining blindfolded. No, this tremor stemmed from the crushing weight of responsibility, the precarious house of cards her life had become. The eviction notice was a glaring crimson reminder, pasted 3 weeks overdue on her door. Emma, her bright, artistic daughter, desperately needed new art supplies, the kind that fueled her imagination. And the electricity bill, a sinister green rectangle, lay on the kitchen counter, a silent, ticking bomb threatening to plunge them into darkness. Listen closely, Maria. Thomas, the floor manager, murmured, his voice roughened by years of navigating demanding clientele. The lines etched around his kind eyes deepened with concern. Table 12 is about to be occupied by Declan Ashford. The name hung in the air, a palpable chill settling over the bustling restaurant. Maria had heard the name whispered, always in hushed, terrified tones, during her all-too-brief training. Declan Ashford, the boy wonder, the ruthless visionary who had birthed the Ashford Technologies empire, amassing a staggering billion-dollar fortune before his 35th birthday. The scandal sheets, with their lurid headlines, had dubbed him the Ice King of Manhattan, not just for his laser-focused business acumen, but for his purported legendary coldness toward the hapless souls who dared to serve him. We've lost 3 servers this month alone because of him, Thomas confessed, his large hands twisting together in a silent plea for understanding. He'll send back dishes for the most microscopic imperfections, demands modifications that border on the impossible. And heaven help you, he lowered his voice, if his sparkling water glass remains even momentarily empty. Maria, bewildered, watched as seasoned servers suddenly discovered urgent tasks requiring their immediate attention in the opposite direction of table 12. Then why on earth does the restaurant tolerate him? She finally asked, her voice laced with disbelief. Thomas sighed, a weary sound filled with resignation. Because when Declan Ashford graces an establishment with his presence, the entire Manhattan elite follows, like moths to a flame. His mere patronage has, quite literally, doubled our revenue in the past year. I need you to serve him tonight, Maria. Everyone else has declined. Maria's gaze drifted toward the entrance, where a figure, imposing and undeniably magnetic, had materialized. Declan Ashford moved through the azure room like a winter storm rolling in off the ocean, his presence an undeniable force that momentarily silenced the murmur of conversations and drew every eye. He was a symphony in charcoal and steel, a bespoke suit that undoubtedly cost more than Maria's annual income, meticulously tailored to his powerful frame. Dark hair, swept back with an unconscious arrogance, revealing a face that could have been carved from glacial granite. His eyes, a startling shade of steel gray, scanned the room with a predatory intelligence, assessing the territory with the cold, calculating gaze of a hawk circling its prey. He settled into table 12 without so much as a nod of acknowledgement to the hovering maitre d', immediately pulling out his phone and beginning to type with short, aggressive movements, his fingers drumming a silent, impatient rhythm. "I'll take him," Maria said, the words emerging with a surprising steadiness that belied the butterflies raging in her stomach. Thomas stared at her as if she had just volunteered to face a firing squad. "Are you certain, Maria? I can try to convince someone else." "I'm certain," she insisted, her voice firm. "I need this job, Thomas, and I'm not afraid of demanding customers." The last part was a bald-faced lie, of course. Maria was, in fact, terrified. But fear, she knew, was a luxury she simply could not afford. Not when her daughter's very well-being depended on her ability to keep this position. So, squaring her shoulders and summoning every ounce of courage she possessed, she grabbed her order pad and approached table 12, painting a professional, if slightly strained, smile on her face. "Good evening, sir. My name is Maria, and I'll be taking care of you this evening." May I start you with something to drink? Declan didn't even bother to look up from his phone. Sparkling water. San Pellegrino, not Perrier. Room temperature, not chilled. In a wine glass, not a tumbler. Lime on the side, cut into eighths, not quarters. His voice was a low, resonant baritone, each word clipped and precise, delivered with the unwavering authority of a drill sergeant barking orders. Maria scribbled furiously, her mind racing to commit every minute detail to memory. And for my meal this evening, he continued, still engrossed in his phone, I'll have the dry-aged ribeye, cooked precisely medium rare. If there's even the slightest hint of pink near the edges, or a trace of gray in the center, send it back. Asparagus on the side, grilled until just tender, not soft. No butter, no oil, just salt and pepper. And I want the house salad with the dressing on the side, but not the regular dressing. Tell the chef to make a vinaigrette with red wine vinegar, good quality olive oil, Dijon mustard, and exactly 3 cloves of garlic. Maria finished writing, her wrist aching, and finally looked up at him, a small, slightly exasperated smile playing on her lips. That's quite specific, sir. Do you always know exactly what you want? Or do you simply enjoy making me write a novel on my order pad? For the very first time, Declan Ashford actually looked up from his phone. His steel-gray eyes, sharp and piercing, locked onto hers with an intensity that stole her breath away. He seemed genuinely surprised, almost thrown, as if he had fully expected her to scurry away, cowed and intimidated. Excuse me? His tone was suddenly laced with a dangerous edge, a subtle warning humming beneath the surface. I'm simply wondering if precision is your superpower, or if you're testing how well I can follow instructions. Sir, Maria replied, carefully maintaining a light, professional tone. Either way, I'm up for the challenge. A heavy silence descended, thick and suffocating. Maria could feel Thomas watching them from across the room, his face etched with a mixture of apprehension and morbid curiosity. He was probably already preparing her termination paperwork, she thought wryly. But she held Declan's unwavering gaze, refusing to look away. And then, something remarkable happened. The corner of Declan's mouth twitched, almost imperceptibly, the barest hint of a smile threatening to break free. Almost, you're new here, aren't you? It was a statement, not a question. First day, sir. Lucky me, I get to serve the legend himself. Legend, he repeated. His fingers finally stilled as he closed his phone with a deliberate, satisfying click. Is that what they're calling me now? Among other things, sir, Maria admitted, her smile widening slightly. Though most of the other terms aren't suitable for polite conversation. This time, Declan Ashford did smile. A genuine, albeit fleeting, expression that momentarily transformed his entire face. It softened the harsh angles, revealing something unexpectedly human beneath the icy exterior. I appreciate honesty, Maria. It's a rare commodity in establishments like this, where everyone is trained to be relentlessly pleasant, regardless of how they truly feel. I'm relentlessly pleasant because I genuinely need this job, sir. Not because corporate policy demands it, Maria countered, meeting his gaze directly. But I figure if I'm going to be pleasant, I might as well be honest, too. Saves everyone time. Declan studied her for a long, silent moment, his expression unreadable, his gray eyes probing, assessing. What's your name again? Maria Carter. Well, Maria Carter, let's see if you can actually deliver what I've ordered. If you manage it without error, there might be hope for this establishment yet. Maria turned and walked briskly toward the kitchen, clutching the detailed order like a winning lottery ticket. She found Thomas waiting anxiously by the expo line, his face pale. What happened, Maria? You were talking to him for nearly 5 minutes. He usually dismisses servers within 30 seconds. I think I might have accidentally intrigued him, Thomas, Maria said, handing the order to the chef. Or he's plotting an elaborate revenge. Either way, we'll find out soon enough. The next hour tested every skill Maria possessed. She monitored Declan's water glass with the vigilance of a hawk, refilling it before it even dipped below the halfway mark. She personally inspected his ribeye before it left the kitchen, ensuring that the temperature was absolutely, unequivocally perfect. She brought his modified salad dressing in a small, antique crystal container, placing it carefully beside his plate with a flourish. Throughout the meal, Declan ate in concentrated silence, occasionally pausing to make notes on his phone, but never uttering a single complaint. Maria observed him from a discreet, professional distance, noticing details she had initially missed in her nervous haze. The subtle way his jaw tightened when he was deep in thought. The unconscious gesture of running his hand through his dark hair when he was reviewing something on his phone screen. The brief, almost imperceptible flicker of satisfaction that crossed his face when he tasted something prepared exactly as he had requested. When he had finally finished, Maria approached to clear his plates, her heart pounding with anticipation. "How is everything, Mr. Ashford?" she asked, her voice carefully neutral. "Adequate," he said, his tone flat. From the expression on Thomas's face across the room, Maria gathered that adequate was apparently the highest praise Declan ever bestowed. "Just adequate, sir? I'll have to try harder next time," she said, allowing a playful smile to touch her lips. Declan looked up at her, that almost smile returning to his lips. "Next time? Well, I assumed you'd be back, sir. Table 12 seems to be your regular spot. And I've been told that when Declan Ashford finds something he likes, he's quite loyal to it." "You've been told correctly," he acknowledged, his eyes twinkling with amusement. He pulled out a sleek black leather wallet and placed several bills on the table. Maria's eyes widened when she saw the amount. He had left a tip that was 3 times the cost of his meal. "Mr. Ashford, this is far too much," she stammered, genuinely flustered. "Consider it an investment in competent service, Maria," he replied, standing and smoothly buttoning his impeccably tailored suit jacket. "I'll be returning on Thursday evening at 8 o'clock. I expect you to be my server." It was not a request, Maria knew, but a command, delivered with the quiet authority that brooked no argument. Before Maria could respond, Declan Ashford turned and walked toward the exit with the same purposeful stride he had entered with, leaving her standing beside table 12, clutching enough money to pay her overdue rent and buy Emma those much-needed school supplies. Thomas rushed over the moment Declan disappeared through the door, his eyes wide with disbelief. "What did you do, Maria? What magic spell did you cast? He wants you specifically as his server. How did you manage that?" "I just treated him like a human being instead of a monster." "Thomas?" Maria said, carefully folding the bills and tucking them into her apron pocket. "Apparently, that's a revolutionary concept around here." As she cleared table 12, preparing it for the next guests, Maria felt the curious stares of every other server in the restaurant. She had survived Declan Ashford, the man who had made experienced waiters flee in tears. More than that, she had somehow earned his grudging approval. But as she caught her reflection in one of the polished silver serving trays, a nagging feeling of unease settled in her stomach. She wondered if she had just made her job infinitely easier or infinitely more complicated. There had been something in Declan's gray eyes during their brief exchanges, something that went beyond mere appreciation for efficient service. It was an interest that felt personal rather than professional. Thursday would reveal whether she had found an unexpected ally or walked directly into a beautiful, gilded trap. Thursday arrived faster than Maria had anticipated. She spent the intervening days replaying every moment of her encounter with Declan Ashford, analyzing his words and expressions like a student cramming for a critical exam. Emma had been thrilled with the new school supplies, chattering excitedly about her upcoming art project, her small face alight with joy, while Maria silently wondered if this job might actually provide the stability they so desperately needed, a cautious hope blooming in her chest. The azure room hummed with its usual elegant energy as Maria adjusted her uniform, a familiar knot of anxiety tightening in her stomach. Thomas had given her a knowing look when she arrived, a subtle nod toward table 12, which remained conspicuously empty and reserved, a small placard bearing Declan's name prominently displayed. 8 o'clock arrived with impeccable punctuality, and so did Declan Ashford. Tonight, he wore a navy suit with a crisp white shirt, no tie, the top button casually undone in a way that somehow managed to make him look even more intimidating. But when his eyes found Maria across the restaurant, something flickered in his expression, a momentary softening that eased the harsh lines around his mouth. "Good evening, Mr. Ashford," Maria greeted as he settled into his chair, her voice a little breathless. "Same order as last time? Or are you feeling adventurous tonight?" "Adventurous," he said, the single word laced with amusement, surprising her. "What would you recommend?" Maria blinked, taken aback. In all the dire warnings she had received about Declan Ashford, no one had ever mentioned that he was capable of asking for recommendations. "The chef has a special tonight, sir. Pan-seared salmon with a honey ginger glaze, served over quinoa with roasted vegetables. It's not on the regular menu." "Is it good?" he asked, his eyebrows raised slightly. "Honestly, sir, I haven't tasted it. I can't afford to eat here on my salary," Maria admitted with a self-deprecating shrug. "But Chef Martinez has been perfecting that glaze for weeks, and the kitchen staff keeps sneaking bites when he's not looking, which I take as a good sign." Declan's lips curved into a genuine, warm smile. "Your honesty is refreshing, Maria. I'll trust your untested recommendation. And bring me whatever wine you think pairs well with it." "You're giving me a lot of power here, Mr. Ashford," Maria said, her eyes sparkling with amusement. "What if my taste is terrible? Then I'll know not to trust you next time," he said, his voice low and suggestive. "But somehow, Maria, I doubt your taste is terrible." As Maria walked toward the kitchen, she felt his gaze following her, warm and attentive, in a way that sent unexpected tingles dancing down her spine. She pushed the unsettling feeling aside, focusing on the task at hand, selecting the perfect wine from the restaurant's extensive cellar, a task she approached with newfound confidence and determination. With the sommelier's expert guidance, she made her selection, and the evening began to unfold in a way that was dramatically different than the previous week. Declan ate slowly, savoring each bite, and when Maria checked on him, he actually engaged her in conversation, asking questions and listening intently to her responses. "How long have you been working here, Maria?" he asked, his gray eyes fixed on her face. "This is my second week, sir. Before this, I worked at a diner in Brooklyn." "What made you switch?" Maria hesitated, wondering how much truth to reveal. "The tips are better here, sir. I have a daughter, Emma. She's 8. The diner wasn't covering our expenses anymore." Something flickered in Declan's eyes. Understanding, perhaps, or empathy. "You're raising her alone?" Her father left when she was 2. He decided parenthood wasn't compatible with his dream of becoming a rock star in Los Angeles. Maria kept her tone deliberately neutral, not wanting his pity. "I'm sure you are," he said softly, his gaze lingering on her face. "You strike me as someone who manages everything just fine, regardless of the circumstances." The compliment caught Maria off guard, leaving her momentarily speechless. "Is that your way of saying I seem stubborn, sir?" "It's my way of saying you seem strong, Maria. There's a difference." Their eyes met across the table, and Maria felt that strange flutter again. Stronger this time, a warm, unsettling sensation that made her heart skip a beat. She cleared her throat, breaking the intense moment. "Can I get you anything else, Mr. Ashford?" "Actually, yes," he said, a thoughtful expression on his face. "I noticed the dessert menu doesn't have anything particularly interesting. Do you have any thoughts on what the Azure Room should offer dessert-wise?" "Are you asking me to critique the restaurant's desserts to your face, sir?" Maria asked, her eyes widening in mock surprise. "I'm asking for your opinion, Maria. I suspect you have several." Maria glanced around, ensuring that Thomas wasn't within earshot. "Honestly, sir, the desserts here are technically perfect, but emotionally empty. They look beautiful on the plate, but they don't tell a story. There's no warmth, no memory attached to them. Dessert should make you feel something, not just taste something." Declan leaned forward, genuinely interested. "What kind of dessert makes you feel something, Maria?" "My grandmother used to make this chocolate cake. Nothing fancy, just a simple recipe she learned from her own mother. But when you ate it, you could taste generations of love baked into every layer. That's what dessert should be, sir. Connection. Warmth. Can you make this chocolate cake? He asked, his voice softening. I can make a lot of things, sir, Maria replied, a wistful smile gracing her lips. Baking is my actual passion. I've been developing recipes for years, dreaming about opening my own small dessert cafe someday. Maria stopped abruptly, suddenly embarrassed by her unexpected admission. Sorry, Mr. Ashford. You didn't ask for my life story. I did, actually, he said, his gray eyes holding hers. I asked what you thought and you told me. That's more valuable than you realize. Declan pulled out his phone and typed something quickly. What if I told you I could make that dream happen, Maria? Maria's heart skipped a beat. Excuse me, sir? I invest in promising ventures, Maria. Your passion is obvious, and passion combined with talent is rare. I'd like to fund your dessert cafe. The offer hung in the air between them, shimmering with possibility. Too good to be true, Maria thought, a wave of disbelief washing over her. Her instincts screamed warnings, urging her to be cautious. Why would you do that, sir? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. You've known me for exactly 2 weeks. Because I recognize potential when I see it, Maria. And because I'm tired of eating emotionally empty desserts, he said, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. Maria shook her head, still trying to process the outlandishness of his offer. Mr. Ashford. Declan. Please call me Declan. Declan. She tested the name carefully, letting it roll off her tongue. Men like you don't just hand out business opportunities to waitresses without expecting something in return. What's the catch? His expression hardened slightly, the warmth receding from his eyes. What do you think I'm expecting, Maria? Maria held his intense gaze, refusing to back down. I don't know, Declan. That's what worries me. The tension between them crackled with unspoken possibilities, a silent dance of attraction and apprehension. Finally, Declan nodded slowly, conceding her point. Fair enough. How about this, Maria? Make me 3 desserts. Your 3 best creations. If they're as good as I suspect they'll be, we'll discuss terms. If they're not, we'll forget this conversation ever happened. And if I say no, he added, his voice softening, then I'll continue ordering the emotionally empty desserts and enjoying our Thursday evening conversations. Your choice, Maria. No pressure. But there was pressure, of course. Enormous pressure. Because this was the opportunity she had been dreaming about for years. An opportunity to escape the relentless grind, to build something meaningful for herself and for Emma. It also terrified her more than anything else she had ever faced. I'll need to think about it, she said finally, her voice trembling slightly. Take all the time you need, Maria. Over the following weeks, Thursday dinners became the focal point of both their lives, anticipated with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. Declan arrived precisely at 8, and Maria served him with growing confidence. Their conversations deepening, moving beyond surface pleasantries into genuine exchanges about life, ambition, and disappointment. Declan revealed fragments of himself slowly, peeling back the layers of his carefully constructed armor. His parents had died in a car accident when he was 19, leaving him a struggling tech startup and an enormous mountain of debt. He built Ashford Technologies from nothing, sacrificing relationships, comfort, and tenderness along the way. The Ice King persona isn't an act, Maria, he admitted one evening, his voice raw with vulnerability. It's armor. When you've been burned enough times by people wanting something from you, you stop letting anyone get close. So why are you letting me close, Declan? Maria asked, her heart pounding in her chest. He looked at her with those penetrating gray eyes, his gaze unwavering. Because you're the first person in years who seems interested in me, not my bank account. You challenge me, Maria. You make me laugh. And you don't treat me like I'm made of money in danger. You are made of money in danger, Maria pointed out, a teasing smile playing on her lips. Fair, he conceded, his own smile widening. But with you, Maria, I feel like I might be made of other things, too. Better things. Maria had finally agreed to the dessert challenge, spending her rare free hours developing 3 recipes, pouring her heart and soul into each creation. She brought them to the Azure Room on a Tuesday afternoon when the restaurant was closed, meeting Declan in the private dining room. The first was her grandmother's chocolate cake, elevated with dark cocoa and a hint of espresso, a tribute to love and tradition. The second was a deconstructed apple pie, the classic comfort food reimagined with cinnamon ice cream and a delicate caramel drizzle, a symbol of warmth and nostalgia. The third was her most daring creation, a lavender honey tart with a buttery, melt-in-your-mouth crust, a testament to her creativity and innovation. Declan tasted each one in complete silence, his expression unreadable. Maria's heart pounded so loudly she was certain he could hear it echoing in the quiet room. When he finished, he set down his fork and looked at her with an intensity that made her knees weak. These aren't just good, Maria. They're extraordinary. Each one tells a story just like you said dessert should. So what happens now? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. Now, we discuss terms, Maria. I'll provide the funding for your cafe. You'll maintain full creative control. We split ownership 50-50. 50-50? She echoed, stunned by his generosity. That's incredibly generous, Declan. It's fair, Maria. You're providing the vision and the talent. I'm providing the capital and the business expertise. Equal partnership. Maria studied him carefully, searching for any sign of deception. What's the catch, Declan? No catch, Maria, he said softly, his eyes locked on hers. Just one request. What's that? She asked, her apprehension growing. I'd like to be involved in the process, Maria. Help with decisions, offer advice. I find myself wanting to be part of building something meaningful again, not just acquiring companies and maximizing profits. Something in his voice made Maria realize that this was about more than just business. Declan was lonely, searching for connection, trying to remember what it felt like to create rather than conquer. Okay, she said softly, a small smile gracing her lips. Partners? They shook hands, their fingers intertwining, but neither of them let go immediately. The touch lingered, skin against skin, the professional boundaries blurring into something far more dangerous and exciting. There's something else I'd like to request, Maria, Declan said, his voice dropping lower, his gaze intense, completely separate from the business arrangement. What's that, Declan? She asked, her pulse quickening. I have a house upstate, Maria. Beautiful property overlooking a lake. I'd like to take you there this weekend. He paused, his eyes searching hers. No business discussions, no contracts. Just two people getting to know each other better. Maria's pulse quickened, a surge of desire and apprehension coursing through her veins. I don't think that's a good idea, Declan. We're about to become business partners. Mixing personal feelings with professional relationships rarely ends well. I know, Maria, he admitted, his voice rough with honesty. But I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since the moment you challenged me in this restaurant. I've tried to keep things professional, but I've failed miserably. He stepped closer, his hand still holding hers, his thumb stroking her skin gently. Tell me you don't feel this too, Maria, and I'll never mention it again. Maria wanted to lie, to protect herself and her daughter from potential heartbreak. But the truth spilled out anyway, a whispered confession she couldn't suppress. I feel it, Declan. Terrifies me. Terrifies me too, Maria, he admitted, his voice barely audible. I haven't let anyone close in years, but with you I want to try. The weekend at his upstate house was magical and complicated in equal measure. They cooked together in his gourmet kitchen, laughing as they clumsily attempted a complicated French sauce. They walked along the lake at sunset, hand in hand, the sky ablaze with fiery colors. They talked about everything and nothing, from childhood dreams to adult disappointments, sharing secrets and vulnerabilities with an honesty that both exhilarated and frightened Maria. Emma stayed with Maria's mother, giving Maria a rare taste of freedom and possibility. On Saturday night, they sat on his deck under a blanket of stars. Declan had built a fire in the outdoor fireplace, and the flames cast dancing shadows across his face, highlighting the strength and vulnerability in his features. "I need to tell you something, Maria," he said, staring into the flickering flames, his voice suddenly somber. "I was married once 5 years ago. Jennifer was beautiful, intelligent, everything I thought I wanted. But she married Declan Ashford, the billionaire, not Declan, the person. When the tech market crashed and I lost 40% of my net worth overnight, she left. Said she didn't sign up to be married to someone with only 600 million instead of $1 billion. That's heartbreaking, Declan," Maria said softly, her hand reaching out to cover his. "It was clarifying, Maria. I realized I had built my entire life around success and wealth, but I had forgotten how to actually live, how to be vulnerable, how to trust, how to feel." He turned to look at her, his gray eyes searching hers. "Until you walked up to my table with that smart mouth and fearless attitude, Maria." Maria felt tears prickling her eyes. "I'm scared, Declan. I have Emma to think about. I can't just follow my heart without considering how this might affect her." "I understand, Maria. I'm not asking you to rush into anything. I'm just asking for a chance. Let's build the cafe together. Let's see where this goes. And if, at any point, you decide it's not working, we'll figure out the business arrangement professionally." "You make it sound so simple," Maria whispered, her voice trembling. "It is simple, Maria," he said, his voice soft but firm. "Terrifying but simple. I care about you, Maria, more than I've cared about anyone in longer than I can remember." She kissed him then, leaning across the space between their chairs and pressing her lips to his. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, exploratory, but quickly deepened into something urgent and necessary, a desperate need for connection and reassurance. Declan pulled her into his lap, his hands tangling in her hair as years of loneliness and hunger poured into their embrace. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Declan rested his forehead against hers, his eyes filled with tenderness. "Stay tonight, Maria. Not for anything except being close. I just want to fall asleep with you in my arms." Maria did stay, and it was the most intimate night of her life. Even though they only slept, curled together against Declan's chest, listening to his heartbeat, she felt safe in a way she hadn't since before Emma's father had left. But Sunday morning brought the harsh light of reality. Declan's phone rang at 6 a.m. An emergency with one of his companies. He took the call in the next room, and Maria heard his voice transform from warm and gentle to cold and commanding, the Ice King returning with a vengeance. When he came back to the bedroom, his walls were up again, impenetrable and unyielding. "I need to get back to the city immediately, Maria. There's a crisis that requires my immediate attention." "Okay, Declan, I understand," she said, her voice carefully controlled. "Do you, Maria?" He looked at her with something like anguish in his eyes. "Because I'm not sure I do. Every time I let someone in, it becomes a liability. Every time I feel something real, it threatens everything I've built." "What are you saying, Declan?" Maria asked, her heart sinking. "I'm saying I don't know if I can do this, Maria. Be with you, be vulnerable, and still be the person I need to be in my business. Maybe I'm too damaged for normal relationships." The words hit her like physical blows, leaving her breathless and reeling. Maria sat up, wrapping the sheet around herself, her body trembling with a mixture of anger and disappointment. "So what was this weekend, Declan? A test? A moment of weakness you're already regretting?" "No, Maria. It was the best weekend I've had in years." "That's exactly the problem, isn't it?" she said, her voice rising. They drove back to the city in painful silence, the unspoken words hanging heavy in the air between them. When Declan dropped her at her apartment building, he didn't get out of the car. "I'll have my lawyers draw up the partnership papers for the cafe, Maria," he said, staring straight ahead, his face devoid of emotion. "You'll have full creative control and 50% ownership, as promised. Whatever happens between us personally, I won't let that affect your dream." "How noble of you, Declan," Maria said bitterly, grabbing her bag. "Let me know when the Ice King decides whether he's brave enough to actually feel something." She slammed the car door and didn't look back, tears streaming down her face as she climbed the stairs to her small, cramped apartment, the promise of a brighter future now tainted with heartache and disillusionment. 3 days later, a courier delivered a thick folder of legal documents and a check large enough to make Maria's hands shake. Declan had kept his promise. The cafe was now within her grasp. But as she stared at the check, a single tear rolled down her cheek. The money felt cold in her hands, a hollow victory in the face of her broken heart. The cafe was, here's the translation and rewrite, expanded and made deeply creative, happening with or without him. But that night, a profound solitude settled over Maria. In the quiet sanctuary of her kitchen, long after Emma's soft snores filled the apartment, she found herself clutching her grandmother's faded chocolate cake recipe. The worn card felt like a tangible link to a past where love and family were as certain as the rising sun. Now, tears blurred the delicate script, each drop a tiny testament to her conflicted heart. She had achieved every professional dream she had ever dared to whisper to the stars, the very ones she had envisioned sharing intimately with another soul. That other soul, however, was a ghost. The construction site throbbed with relentless energy, a symphony of clanging metal and shouted instructions. As Maria stood within the skeletal framework of what would soon blossom into Sweet Haven, her dream dessert cafe. 6 weeks. 6 weeks had crawled by, each day a torturous echo of the moment Declan had deposited her at her apartment door. His eyes shadowed with an emotion she couldn't quite decipher. She had plunged headfirst into the cafe project, a woman possessed. Every design element, from the placement of the sugar bowls to the sweeping arc of the countertops, every meticulously crafted menu item, down to the last sprinkle, received her undivided attention. Partly, it was because her heart and soul were invested in Sweet Haven, a place she envisioned as a haven of warmth and deliciousness in a city that often felt cold and indifferent. And partly, it was a desperate attempt to drown out the incessant thoughts of storm-gray eyes and almost smiles, the memories of a connection so potent it had threatened to consume her entirely. The space itself was a miracle, a coveted corner spot nestled in the heart of Greenwich Village, boasting floor-to-ceiling windows that poured generous rivers of natural light into the interior. Maria had curated a palette of comforting colors, choosing honey-toned wood, creamy walls, and subtle touches of sage green that conspired to create the ambience of a welcoming, well-loved kitchen. A far cry from a sterile, impersonal commercial space. Miss Carter, the no-nonsense contractor with a perpetually furrowed brow, approached, holding a tablet like a shield. "We need your final approval on the display case installation," she stated, her voice clipped but respectful. Maria meticulously reviewed the plans, making subtle adjustments to ensure the lighting would showcase her precious desserts in their most flattering light, like jewels in a kingdom of sweets. She had assembled a small but passionate team, a meticulous sous chef, 2 wildly talented bakers, and a manager with an infectious enthusiasm. All were kindred spirits, sharing her vision of crafting desserts that whispered stories and forged connections, tiny edible bridges between strangers. She had not seen or heard directly from Declan since that fateful night, only receiving curt, impersonal documents through his phalanx of lawyers. The arrangement was impeccably professional, a model of detached efficiency, yet the profound emotional distance carved a gaping hollow in her chest, a constant, gnawing ache. "Mommy, can I help?" Emma's bright voice sliced through the air, an oasis of innocent joy. She appeared from the back room, where she had been happily absorbed in her artwork at a small table Maria had thoughtfully provided for her weekend visits to the site. "Of course, my love. Want to help me pick out the plates we'll use?" Maria asked, forcing a smile that she hoped reached her eyes. Emma nodded with unrestrained enthusiasm. They spent the next hour poring over samples from a local ceramist, each plate a unique work of art, subtly different from the next. Maria had been adamant about using handmade dishes, convinced that mass-produced uniformity felt fundamentally wrong for the deeply personal experience she was striving to create. As they worked, bathed in the gentle afternoon light, the front door swung open, announcing the arrival of someone unexpected. Maria glanced up, half expecting the electrician, but her heart stuttered, then stopped altogether as she saw Declan standing in the doorway. He looked terrible. The impeccable facade he usually presented to the world was shattered. His once perfectly coiffed hair was disheveled, as if he had repeatedly run his hands through it in frustration. Deep shadows bruised the skin beneath his eyes, betraying a sleeplessness that mirrored her own. He was dressed in jeans and a simple black sweater, a far cry from his usual power suits, the most casually vulnerable she had ever seen him. "Hi," he said, the single word a husky rasp. Emma, with the uncanny perceptiveness of children, looked from Maria to Declan, her brow furrowed. "Mommy, is this your friend who's been making you sad?" she asked, her voice laced with concern. "Emma, honey, why don't you go finish your drawing?" Maria's voice emerged strangled, her carefully constructed composure threatening to crumble. "Okay," Emma agreed, but her gaze remained fixed on Declan, assessing him with unnerving intensity. "But if he made you cry, I'm supposed to kick him in the shins. Grandma said so." A flicker of amusement danced in Declan's eyes, despite the palpable tension that crackled in the air. "Your grandmother sounds wise," he conceded, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. Emma studied him for another long moment. "Seriously?" she insisted, her voice small but firm. "Are you going to make my mommy cry again?" Declan's expression softened. "I hope not," he replied, his voice sincere. "I'm going to try very hard not to." Satisfied with this answer, Emma skipped back to her drawing station, her small shoulders conveying a silent warning. Maria and Declan stood awkwardly amidst the unfinished cafe, the raw space amplifying the chasm of silence that had stretched between them for 6 endless weeks. "What are you doing here?" Maria asked, her voice a tight whisper. "I've been in Tokyo," he explained, his gaze locked on hers. "Emergency acquisition that required my personal attention. I left the day after I dropped you off and just got back this morning." He ran a hand through his hair again, a rare, nervous gesture she had never witnessed before. "I haven't slept in 36 hours because I took the first flight I could get, and I came here straight from the airport." "Why?" Maria asked, her voice barely audible. "Because I've spent the last 6 weeks being exactly who I was before I met you," he confessed, his voice raw with self-loathing. "Cold, efficient, successful, and absolutely miserable. I've closed deals worth hundreds of millions of dollars, Maria. The only thing I could think about was whether you'd forgiven me for being a coward." Maria's throat tightened, constricting her breath. "I don't know what you want me to say, Declan," she whispered, her voice thick with unshed tears. "I want you to tell me I haven't destroyed the best thing that's happened to me in years," he pleaded, his eyes searching hers with desperate intensity. "I want you to tell me it's not too late to be brave." He stepped closer, bridging the physical gap between them, his eyes conveying a vulnerability she had never imagined he possessed. "I want you to tell me that we can still build this dream together, not just as business partners but as partners in everything." "You hurt me," Maria said, her voice cracking with emotion. "You let me in, let me believe we could have something real, and then you locked me out the moment it got scary." "I know," he admitted, his voice laced with anguish, "and I've regretted it every single day. In Tokyo, I was in a meeting with 50 executives discussing strategies worth billions of dollars, and all I could think about was the way you laugh when I say something ridiculous. The way you look at me like I'm more than just a bank account with a pulse. I walked out of that meeting, Maria, right in the middle. I just stood up and left because I realized I was about to sacrifice the only thing that actually matters for things that don't matter at all." "What are you saying?" Maria asked, her heart pounding in her chest, hope flickering like a fragile flame. "I'm saying I love you," he declared, his voice resonating with a newfound certainty. "I'm saying I want to be part of Emma's life. I'm saying I want to stand next to you when Sweet Haven opens and watch you make people happy with your desserts. I'm saying I'm terrified and unsure and probably going to mess this up, but I'd rather try and fail than never try at all." Tears streamed freely down Maria's face, a torrent of relief and disbelief. "You love me?" she repeated, her voice thick with emotion. "Desperately, completely, in a way that makes absolutely no logical sense given how recently we met," he confirmed, his gaze unwavering. But there it is. I love you, Maria Carter. Emma's voice piped up from her corner, shattering the intensity of the moment. Does this mean you're going to be my dad? She asked, her eyes wide with innocent curiosity. They both turned to find Emma watching them with intense interest, her drawing momentarily forgotten. Declan looked at Maria, silently seeking her permission before walking over to crouch beside Emma's table. I don't know yet, he told her honestly. That's something your mom and I need to figure out together. But I'd very much like to get to know you better and be part of your life, if that's okay with you. Can you bake? Emma asked, her gaze fixed on his. Not as well as your mom, Declan admitted with a wry smile. Can you help with my math homework? I'm bad at fractions. I'm excellent at fractions, Declan countered, his eyes twinkling. Emma considered this for a moment. Okay, she conceded. You can stick around, but if you make mommy cry again, I'm telling Grandma, and she'll kick you way harder than I will. Declan laughed, a genuine, joyful sound that transformed his face, erasing the lines of fatigue and worry. Deal? He agreed, extending his hand for a shake. He stood and walked back to Maria, who was now crying openly, tears of happiness streaming down her cheeks. Can you forgive me? He asked softly, reaching out to cup her face. I already have, she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. But Declan, we need to be honest with each other. Always. No running away when things get difficult. I promise, he vowed, his voice fervent. No more running. He cupped her face gently, wiping away the tears with his thumbs. Can I kiss you? You better, she breathed, leaning into his touch. The kiss was different from their first one. Slower, deeper, filled with the weight of shared vulnerability and the promise of unwavering commitment, rather than just the initial spark of passion. When they broke apart, Emma made gagging sounds from her corner, earning a shared laugh from Maria and Declan, the sound lighter than air. The next 3 months were a whirlwind of transformation, a period of intense growth and deepening connection. Declan became a constant fixture in the cafe's construction, showing up after his relentless workday to help with whatever Maria needed, from hauling lumber to offering his opinion on paint swatches. He proved surprisingly handy with tools, and, more importantly, he proved willing to listen to her vision, to support it without trying to take over or impose his own will. He was endlessly patient with Emma, helping with her homework, attending her school play, slowly building trust and affection. Maria watched her daughter blossom under the attentive gaze of a good man, and her own heart swelled with a happiness she had thought she had forfeited forever. Sweet Haven's opening night arrived shrouded in a cloak of both giddy excitement and paralyzing terror. Maria had spent the entire day immersed in the comforting ritual of preparing desserts, each one representing a different facet of her journey. Her grandmother's chocolate cake held pride of place, a symbol of unwavering love and tradition, but she had also created new recipes inspired by her own experiences, flavors that spoke of her hopes and dreams. A honey lavender tart that tasted like the boundless possibilities that lay ahead. A rich chocolate mousse infused with the bold, invigorating notes of espresso, representing the late nights and relentless hard work she had poured into her dream. An apple cinnamon strudel that evoked the warmth and nostalgia of autumn afternoons spent with Emma. The cafe filled quickly, a vibrant tapestry woven from a diverse crowd. Food critics with their discerning palates, neighborhood locals eager for a new gathering place, Declan's business associates, dressed in their power suits, and Maria's friends and family, their faces beaming with pride, all mingled together, a microcosm of the community she had hoped to create. Thomas, the esteemed chef from the Azure Room, arrived with half his restaurant staff, their voices a chorus of cheers for Maria's success. Declan stood beside her near the kitchen, his presence a comforting anchor amidst the swirling chaos. He looked proud and endearingly nervous in equal measure. He had insisted on donning an apron and helping serve the desserts, firmly refusing to play the role of the wealthy benefactor standing aloof from the work. "How are you feeling?" he asked during a brief lull, his voice laced with genuine concern. "Like I might throw up or fly," Maria confessed, her hands trembling slightly. Maybe both simultaneously, he teased, squeezing her hand reassuringly. You've got this, Maria. Look around. Everyone here loves what you've created. And they did. Maria watched as customers tasted her desserts, their faces lighting up with moments of pure joy and nostalgic reverie. She overheard snippets of conversations about cherished childhood memories, about beloved grandmothers, about shared celebrations and comforting rituals. Her desserts were doing exactly what she had hoped, creating connections, sparking memories, and weaving a tapestry of shared human experience. The New York Times food critic arrived fashionably late, an elegant woman named Patricia Reynolds, whose reviews held the power to make or break new establishments. She ordered one of each dessert, requesting a quiet corner table where she could observe and reflect without distraction, taking meticulous notes in a small, leather-bound notebook. Maria tried to avoid watching her, but it was an impossible task. Her entire future, it felt, balanced precariously on Patricia Reynolds's discerning opinion. When the critic finally finished, she approached Maria directly, her expression unreadable. "Miss Carter," she said, her voice low and measured. "Could we speak privately?" Maria's stomach plummeted. They stepped into her small, cluttered office, the air thick with unspoken anxiety, and Patricia closed the door, shutting out the cheerful buzz of the cafe. "I need to tell you something," Patricia began, her gaze direct and unwavering, and Maria braced herself for the inevitable sting of criticism. "In 30 years of reviewing restaurants, I've become cynical," Patricia confessed, her voice softer than Maria had expected. "Every dessert started tasting the same, technically perfect, perhaps, but emotionally hollow. Tonight, your chocolate cake made me cry because it reminded me of my grandmother, who passed away last year. That's not something that happens to food critics, Miss Carter. We're supposed to remain objective." "Is that bad?" Maria asked nervously, her heart pounding in her chest. "It's extraordinary," Patricia countered, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. "You've created something truly special here, something that transcends mere culinary skill. My review will reflect that." After Patricia left, leaving Maria reeling in a daze of disbelief, Maria found Declan in the cafe's small garden, a tiny outdoor space she had filled with twinkling string lights and fragrant herb planters. He was checking his phone, but looked up immediately when she approached, his expression softening with concern. "The Times critic loved it," Maria stammered, still in shock. Declan's face broke into the most genuine, unrestrained smile she had ever seen from him. He swept her into his arms, spinning her around while she laughed, the sound bubbling up from deep within her soul. When he finally set her down, he didn't let go, his hands remaining clasped tightly in hers. "I have something to ask you," he said, his voice suddenly serious, the playful light fading from his eyes. "Declan, you're making me nervous," Maria confessed, her heart beginning to race. "Good nervous or bad nervous?" he teased, his eyes twinkling again. "Undetermined nervous," she replied, her voice breathless. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box, its dark surface gleaming softly in the warm light. Maria's breath caught in her throat as he opened it, revealing a ring that was perfect, simple, elegant. A single, exquisitely cut diamond on a platinum band that caught the string lights like captured starlight. "Maria Carter," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "You've changed my entire life. You've made me remember how to feel, how to dream, how to be more than just success and money. You and Emma have become my family, the only family that truly matters to me." He took a shaky breath, his gaze locked on hers, his eyes conveying a depth of love and vulnerability that took her breath away. "Will you marry me, Maria? Will you let me spend the rest of my life making you happy and eating your incredibly addictive desserts?" Maria looked at this man who had walked into the azure room as an ice king, cold and unapproachable, and had slowly melted into someone warm and real and utterly perfect for her. She thought about Emma asking for help with fractions, about late nights planning the cafe together, about the way he looked at her, as if she were the most valuable thing in his world. "Yes," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "Yes, absolutely yes. The ring slid onto her finger perfectly, as if it had been destined to be there all along. And when Declan kissed her beneath the twinkling string lights, she tasted the salt from her happy tears and the sweet promise of forever. They walked back into the cafe, hand in hand, to find that Emma had somehow discovered the engagement and organized an impromptu celebration, rallying the guests to their cause with her infectious enthusiasm. Champagne appeared as if by magic, heartfelt toasts were made, and Sweet Haven's opening night seamlessly transformed into an engagement party. Later, after the last guests had departed, leaving behind a trail of confetti and happy memories, and Emma had finally fallen asleep on the cafe's couch. Exhausted but content, Maria and Declan stood at the window, looking out at the twinkling lights of Greenwich Village. "We did it," Maria said softly, her voice filled with awe. "We built something beautiful." "We did it together," Declan corrected, wrapping his arms around her from behind, pulling her close against him. "And we're going to keep building together, Maria. The cafe, our family, our life. No more running away when things get scary. No more running. I promise to stay and fight for us, even when I'm terrified." Maria turned in his arms, looking up at the man who had started as her most difficult customer and had become her partner in everything. "I love you, Declan Ashford," she whispered, her heart overflowing with gratitude. "I love you too, Maria Carter," he replied, his voice husky with emotion. "Soon to be Maria Ashford if you want." "I think I'll be Maria Carter Ashford," she decided, a smile playing on her lips. "I like the sound of both our names together." "Perfect," he murmured, his gaze adoring. "Just like you." 6 months later, they were married in Sweet Haven's garden, surrounded by family, friends, and enough desserts to feed a small army. Emma served as flower girl and junior baker, proudly informing everyone that she had helped make the wedding cake, her small face beaming with pride. Declan kept his promise. He stayed through arguments and challenges, through busy seasons at the cafe and stressful deals at his company. He learned to communicate instead of withdrawing, to open his heart instead of shielding it behind walls of ice. And Maria learned to trust instead of protecting herself with independence, to believe in the power of love to conquer all. Sweet Haven thrived, expanding to include a small kitchen where Maria taught baking classes, sharing her passion and skills with others. Declan surprised her by enrolling in the first class, claiming he needed to learn properly if he was going to help Emma with her future baking projects. On their first anniversary, they returned to his house upstate, where everything had almost fallen apart and had ultimately come together. They sat on the deck, where he had first confessed his fears, where she had kissed him despite her own reservations. "Do you ever regret it?" Declan asked, holding her close, his voice soft against her ear. "Taking a chance on the difficult billionaire who made you nervous?" Maria pretended to consider this seriously, her eyes twinkling with mischief. "Well, you did make me cry that one time," she teased. "Emma still threatens to kick you for that, as she should." Rhea smiled, snuggling deeper into his embrace. "But no," she said, her voice sincere. "I don't regret it. Not for a single second. You gave me my dream, Declan, and I gave you back your heart." "Fair trade," Declan murmured, kissing the top of her head. Inside the house, Emma was video calling Maria's mother, probably regaling her with tales of their weekend adventures. The sound of her infectious laughter drifted through the open windows, mixing with the gentle lapping of the lake and the whisper of the evening breeze. This was what happiness tasted like, Maria thought, a profound sense of contentment settling over her soul. Not perfect or without challenges, but real and sweet and worth every risk they had taken to get here. And somewhere in the vast expanse of the universe, she liked to imagine her grandmother smiling, knowing that her simple chocolate cake recipe had done exactly what the best dessert should do: bring people together and create a love story worth savoring.